the Around the NFL podcast. Release the tapes, Gregg!
From the Chris Wessling podcast studio. Everybody wants it. Why won't you just give the people what they want?
Don't have it.
It's Around the NFL. I am Dan Hanzus. Got heroes here. Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler, and back in the fourth chair, the dude, Patrick Claybon. What's up, bud?
What's up, guys? Good to be
Love
here.
it.
Good to be here with you.
It's great.
Good to have you.
Connie was supposed to be back this week, but she got pulled into some type of nefarious Park Avenue event.
Why is it nefarious?
Well, I mean, what is she? She's hosting some sort of mysterious event in the Big Apple.
If it's costing our show a Connie Fox Wednesday, it's
That's
nefarious to me.
Yeah.
It's not costing it.
What?
Well, sure. We've got a whole different show, Claybon Wednesday.
Well, let me transition to that cell, Mr. Contrarian. Yes, we don't have Connie, but the fact that we can have Patrick here is even
Oh, well, thanks, guys.
what a blessing. Not that you were a backup,
No,
but we had
It's
announced previously Colleen would be here, so
Right.
it'd be weird just all of a sudden Patrick is here instead.
We've got an incredible stable, and we're versatile, and Patrick proves
We keep
that.
it pretty tight in terms of who's in the regular fourth chair. It's a hallowed spot. It's Chris
playing the
Wessel's
role of
chair.
Colleen Wolfe today is Patrick Claybon.
So it's
We
that.
do need a Patrick theme song. I think it's time.
Do we have any? Have any been sent in? Do we have any?
I
Patrick
don't have
Claybon?
any Patrick. Or we can put out a formal request.
I
All
don't
right,
sure
hey,
it ever
here's
has.
a formal request.
Hit
Let's
up
go.
our vibrant Gmail account.
Yeah, what is the Gmail account? Is it the ATN?
I think it's the ATN podcast. Or let me. You know what?
Everybody-
That's one I should probably know.
There's literally like an Abbey Road of
It's
Patrick
so
Claybon
active,
songs
yeah.
just being sent to the wrong email address. All right. While our producer Eric works on that, we have some breaking news that landed just as we were about to start, and that's the way I like it. Because too many times we get banged the other way. We finish recording, and then, oh, Pete Carroll got fired. Well, not this time. The Seattle Seahawks are moving on from Pete Carroll as their head coach, reported by the Pellraiser and elsewhere. He, as of right now, the way it's being spun, and there's a press conference coming up later today, Carroll will remain in the organization, but not as the head coach. So Pete Carroll, who has had an incredible run in Seattle, 14 years, which, you know, in the NFL, that's, you might as well say 100 years, 137 and 89 and 1 record. That's over a 600 winning percentage. Coached 19 playoff games.
Wow.
Went to the Super Bowl back-to-back years. Very nearly. We don't need to litigate this, but very nearly went back-to-back Super Bowl championships. But that was one of the most memorable teams of this century, the Legion of Boom Seahawks with Russell Wilson and that incredible defense. He is now 72 years old, Gregg Rosenthal. And you had been kind of poking around on this one for a week or so. Sessler and I were trying to figure out who he was texting with those thumbs.
I mean, it's a short list of candidates,
Right.
but we didn't know
Probably
exactly.
Ian. But, Greg, you say, because I had mentioned it again this before we started taping, to you it was common sense. It was more about putting a puzzle together on that.
That was that. I had no information. I was trying to find out what people would say behind the scenes.
What do you think, Ian, by the way, when he gets a Greg text? What is Ian's first reaction? Excitement?
He's absolutely overjoyed because it's the connection is very rich. It's very storied.
freaking jacked. I'm so freaking jacked. I don't know what God damn.
I think he has no feelings whatsoever, just like all of his other
That's accurate.
interactions. And I love him for it. He's a defensive coach, and the defense has been bad for 7 years. They're stuck in this middle ground where you could argue, well, their floor is very high with Pete Carroll, but maybe their ceiling's very low with Pete Carroll, and that the things he said he's going to solve year after year, like, aren't getting solved. He's been cycling through defensive coordinators. He's putting a lot of resources in that. And who knows? I love that they are announcing it as an amicable agreement that his role will, quote, evolve to remain with the organization as an advisor. We maybe aren't going to get the full story on that or no, and I don't really care. Like, they're both grown-ups here, and he is walking away with class. He's going to have a press conference afterwards, which is not always the case, certainly, with a coach that's let go. And he's a legend there, and he deserves to be treated. And maybe he really is just wanting to walk away. There was some whispers about that, too. I'm curious, like, who is making this decision exactly? Obviously, it's Jody Allen to start with, but I think if John Schneider the GM, who has been there as long as Pete Carroll and also has a Super Bowl title, is still there to help hire the next head coach. And if the next head coach is Dan Quinn, which about 17 different NFL insiders have already put out there is the prime candidate, and that maybe this is part of it, is that they feel like they're in a window here where the coach that they want is going to be available. We want to take him before he goes anywhere else. If Schneider's still there, that will tell me maybe it is a little bit more of a push-out situation. But either way, one of the best head coaches I've seen in the NFL.
And I guess, like, if it came down to some version of a power struggle, a soft power struggle, I mean, Pete Carroll won the power struggle essentially over Russell Wilson. And that was the last big sort of battle there. If you're working coach and GM for this long as they did, and they made it work, it's natural that a relationship's going to start to wear down at some point professionally. And so, I mean, it was Pete Carroll that just a couple days ago said pretty clearly, I want to come back and coach this team. So something changed over the past couple of days, but he's not a young guy, although his energy is very young. Maybe there's a natural part of Pete Carroll that's open to this next step.
And he's also very good with the media, and
I don't think
very
I've ever
smart.
interviewed a coach that I liked better, honestly.
Oh, yeah. I
Those
love
owners'
Carroll,
meetings, like,
too.
he's incredible.
I remember being on the rooftop in downtown L.A. for a charity event the year they drafted Russell Wilson, and I'll never forget, like, he was very nice dude and open about how much he loved Wilson, and my mom, obviously, is a big fan of Pete Carroll.
Right.
Dating back to his Jets days. But he said it.
He thinks he's hot.
She thought he was extremely
Keith's
attractive.
okay with that. He's very secure.
My father is very secure about the marriage, but Pete is someone to.
It's good they don't exist in the same.
It's his
social
number one
circle.
competition.
Right.
Let's just hope my dad doesn't want Pete coming east. Put it that way. But when Pete says, Patrick, the other day, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not worried about anything." Like, Pete knew what was going on behind the scenes, and that was just the answer he gave.
Well, and I also think it's one of those situations where he's telling you before everybody else tells you that if something changes regarding my coaching status with the Seattle Seahawks, it was not a decision of mine, right? When he says, like, I love my job, I love this team, he did acknowledge that he said he needed to do some things better. Again, it's a similar question with a lot of these coaching changes. If the Chicago Bears are better on third down on offense and defense on Sunday, are the Seahawks still making a change at the head coaching position,
Well,
like at the end of the season? Well, not this week, right? But is this like a scenario where it's like, this has to be it with Pete Carroll? The direction doesn't
Right. If they don't lose the tiebreak, they literally have the same record as the Packers.
So again, it's one of those things. Like, is this a real long-term decision? Like, but as Greg pointed out, there have been long-term problems in trying to get solutions to them, and Pete hasn't been able to find them. So, like, what's changing in order to get those things?
Here's what I'm fascinated by. The idea of, okay, if he's going upstairs and into some type of nebulous role or an active role, I don't know what it would be, but if it's more like a Bruce Arians with the Bucks type situation, is Pete ready to go into the sunset? Now he's 72, and he's the oldest coach in the league, and obviously you don't see many coaches go this far. But, listen, the president of the United States is 81. I wonder what his market would be if indeed this went in a different direction. Are there teams that want Pete Carroll? Would he be a hot and demand name, whether it was this year or maybe a year from now? That is interesting to me.
I mean, you could pull like a Al Pacino end of Any Given Sunday and wind up somewhere else, because his age to me has nothing to do with the Pete Carroll that we know. Like, I don't care that he's 72.
I mean, check out what was that dramatic win they had, week 16 in prime time? The guy looks like he's 48 years old. He's so chipper and spry, and he loves what he's doing. Something that doesn't compute about this, that he's going upstairs. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you, because, if that Cowboys game had gone a little differently, if that Rams game, which I really feel like was the turning point for both those teams, not a memorable game, but a game that the Seahawks really outplayed the Rams and kind of stubbed their toe at the very end coming out of the Rams bye. I think that got the Rams to like 4-6, 5-6. And the Seahawks, it started their tailspin because their schedule got so much harder. They could have made the playoffs. He's still a very good head coach. It's interesting to look back at his run. He doesn't get the pub Mike Tomlin does, because he did have that 7-10 season in Russell Wilson's last year. But otherwise, they've had a winning record every year since 2012. And you think, wow, they never got back to those heights when they made those back-to-back Super Bowls. But they did win 10 games, 9, 10, 11, 12. sneaky underperformed in the playoffs, which is very frustrating when you're a very good team. And like Mike McCarthy's Packers know this too. 10 playoff appearances, 7 divisional round appearances, but they actually never made it back even to a conference championship after that lost Super Bowl to the Patriots. So it was a lot of one and done or win a wild card and lose. And I think where he strikes me as young, emotionally, but maybe not as young in terms of like schematically. Is he keeping up with what you needed to do defensively and offensively to stay at the top?
I think the place Pete can add value the most might not be in Seattle anymore. Like they've already told him that, hey, we would like you to do less.
Right.
And I think we just saw Bob Myers go over to the Commanders. Like if you can bring in Pete Carroll in a situation to say, hey, how do we go about this process? How do we construct a team? How do we align the general manager and the head coach? I think Pete Carroll could do that somewhere else better than he can in Seattle.
Also, it should be stated he was fantastically successful in college as well. Yeah. Is that a world he would like to go back to? Although that's even kind of more work with the recruiting and all that. You mentioned the other thing, Greg, except for the last Wilson year, also doing it in the NFC West. There's been some juggernauts in that division through the years, and to be able to continually be in the mix, it's another guy that's gonna be hard to replace.
I totally agree, but I also think that was part of the reason they were started to probably think about this, because McVay and Shanahan have owned the Seahawks offensively for 5 years.
Yeah.
Now. So it's like, why are we gonna expect this to change?
That's pretty tough, though, because
I know, no, I get it.
Arguably the two best minds in the sport.
I get it.
Yeah.
It's just that probably led to it that we're like stuck in third.
There is another team in SoFi that is currently looking for a head coach.
Pete would love it down here.
He has LA roots.
I would hire him as just like a guy to be around the team, because one thing, Mark Sanchez was really good talking about this, but then I started listening to Seahawks players talk about this too. Like, no one made you feel better and gave you more confidence that you could do that you could be your best self essentially than Pete Carroll. Like Sanchez and Geno's talked about this too, makes you feel like I'm going to do it. Like, and you want to play for him. And I think this is a bad news for Geno, their starting quarterback, and makes me think it's more likely that
that was Geno's biggest
change
supporter.
everything. I think he really loved Geno. I think it went both ways. He believed in Geno in a way that who knows if the next coach is going to be. So there could be a lot of changes.
All right, so Carroll, there's a bombshell right there. Another bombshell on Tuesday when the Tennessee Titans fired Mike Vrabel. Rap Sheet reported it, and then it was confirmed in a statement from Amy Adams Strunk that Vrabel, the coach of the Titans for the past 6 seasons, leading the team to a 54-45 record and 2 playoff victories, including an AFC title game appearance, is out. And a lot of questions about why this happened, why it wasn't a trade, why the Titans would disconnect from, one of the more successful coaches of the past decade. And it's only fitting, gentlemen, if we're going to be talking a little tight tunes in a big spot, that we bring in a Hall of Famer, a Hall of Fame producer. He's on Mount Rushmore. Do I need to say his name? How about I just play the drop? Hey, buddy. Justin Graver joins us from Parts Unknown. Well, it's actually his office. And there it is, my favorite, the rotating Titans helmet that's going just a little too fast. What's up, buddy? How you been?
I've been great, guys. How are y'all doing? I'm over at Fox Sports producing the NFL on Fox podcast nowadays, but I miss you guys every day.
Wait, the NFL on Fox podcast?
That's right.
We didn't know you were competing with us. We thought you were just doing baseball.
All
Justin.
Right. Well, it was nice having Justin on the show. Until next time.
Gravedigger.
All right, Gravedigger, that's great because you are obviously wonderfully suited for anything involving NFL coverage. You have your Titans podcast, which is called what?
The Music City Audible.
So make sure you check that out. And I am sure you had an emergency episode to break this down. What were your initial thoughts when the news went down that Vrabel was out? How surprised were you? And what do you think about the state of the organization in general?
Yeah, I think it was a bit surprising. I would put it at like a 7 out of 10 surprise rating, because there's been a lot of smoke surrounding Vrabel possibly being traded to the Patriots. I think dating back to him being inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame, we've seen a lot of reports that the Patriots would want to go after him. Would Mike Vrabel want to force his way out? The Titans don't want to move on from Mike Vrabel, but would he want to force his way out and move on himself? And it seems like maybe some of that was overblown, and we've heard a lot of stuff about a rift between Vrabel and general manager Ran Carthon. Ran Carthon dismissed all of that in his press conference yesterday and said he and Vrabel were on great terms. Of course, right? What else is he going to say? He's going to help Vrabel land the next job and not kick his buddy while he's down. But I did find it very interesting that it seems this all has come more from a rift between he and ownership, between he and Amy Adams Strunk. We have Nashville media members citing blow-ups between Vrabel and ownership that seem very interesting. And I think all of this is more about what's happening behind the scenes than anything Vrabel did on the field. And granted, 6-18 in his last 24 games, 1-5 in the division this year. Those are things that can get a head coach fired. But I think that Mike Vrabel proved himself to be a great coach, to always sort of play above the level of talent that he was working with, especially the injury ravaged 2021 season. So for those reasons, it is a surprise, because we thought Vrabel was a good coach for the Titans, but Amy Adams Strunk cited wanting an innovative, fresh approach at the head coaching position. And there's been a lot of talk that Vrabel didn't align with the vision of the future of this team. And I don't really know what that means, because Ran Carthon was asked multiple times, what is the vision? And he said, we'll tell you when it's time to tell you. And Amy Adams Strunk said, we're not going to define that vision right now, but we do have one. And it all feels a little bit messy for sure. But I do think, on the positive bias side, this could play out well for the Titans. If you look at some of the quicker rebuilds in the NFL over the last few years, Sean McVay turning the Rams around quickly, Dan Campbell in Detroit, Mike McDaniel in Miami. But then there's the flip side, the Brandon Staley's that you're really excited to hire when it happens, and 3 years later, everyone's calling for his head. So I think this could go okay, or it could be a major disaster. And if it proves to be a major disaster, I think you have to point to ownership making a rash decision here.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Strunk here. There was that whole season where Malarkey made it to the playoffs. They said they were going to keep him, and then they met. They literally said, we talked contract with him, and then they met, and then they fired him. And then they gave Robinson and Vrabel an extension after 21, and then they fired Robinson 10 months later, which led to Carthon being thrown in here. And I did wonder all season, why are these reports coming out? And sometimes it's hard not to connect the dots. Vrabel has more friends in the media than any coach, I feel like, since Jeff Fisher. And it felt like maybe that was coming from his side, that maybe he wanted to get out. And from her side of it, you can look at it like he seemed to have some issues with two GMs. And that's part of the job, is being on the same page. And he clearly wasn't happy about the A.J. Brown trade, and that was the old GM, and now the new GM. So maybe even though he is a good coach, and I think he is a good coach, he'll get a job, maybe it was time, because it wasn't happening there. A lot of drama.
Yeah, there's some of that, and there's a connection here, Sessdog, between Vrabel and Belichick is connected to Parcells, and I bring this up because when Parcells left the Patriots, it was, if you want me to cook the dinner, you got to let me shop for the groceries. I think Vrabel feels like at this point in time that he should be the guy running the operation, and clearly Strunk was going in a different direction. The fact that you had a GM and an arranged marriage that clearly they didn't hit it off, and ownership seems to have sided with this GM who hasn't succeeded at all, hasn't had much of a chance yet, whereas Vrabel has. That's where I would get a little nervous as a Titans fan about the decision making.
Yeah, and Graver, I'll never forget the night when we were in Las Vegas during the draft, and the bombshell came down, as Greg mentioned, that A.J. Brown was traded, and you immediately started to do a live feed about the whole thing. But you were shell-shocked by that move, and I think crestfallen, and that dates back. That's, to me, the origin of the offense falling apart.
Yeah.
They never found, to the point of getting groceries and helping Vrabel succeed, the offense has been a disaster for 2 seasons. They aren't dynamic the way that other teams are in the AFC, and it's I feel like the frustration that he showed that night and the frustration he's felt since, that makes sense that he's behind the scenes blowing up and not getting his way. And I think a parting is less surprising when you start to put all those pieces together.
Gravedigger, I just want to thank you again. You always kept us young on our show. A very Zoomer move to go into a live stream during the middle of our show
was
there.
impressive.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Well, just to clarify what happened there, Ricky started the live stream and shoved the phone in front of my face and said, "Talk."
That checks out as well.
But yes, that was a fun night for Titans fans. No, it's crazy. You look at the Titans offenses that didn't have AJ Brown under Mike Vrabel, they all finished 27th best or worse in terms of like scoring offense. So was AJ Brown that big of a piece of the puzzle there? Or is there I think part of this whole new direction that Amy Adams-Strunk wants to go in this vision is sort of to get away maybe from the bully ball style of football that Mike Vrabel preached. And, we're going to out physical you as opposed to out scheme you is maybe a little bit old school mindset. And looking at some of the most successful offensive coordinators in today's football, yeah, they're running schemes from the late 90s, the Shanahan scheme, but they're doing so in a way that sort of attacks their opponent's weaknesses. And I always felt like the Titans under Mike Vrabel shied away from that. It was more about, we're going to play our style of ball. Like, we don't care that the team we're playing against has a top-ranked run defense and a bottom-ranked pass defense. We're going to establish the run so we can run play action off of it, and sort of ignoring the more new school ideas of like, you don't necessarily need to be successful on the ground to have a strong play action game. Like, you create that action in the backfield, linebackers are going to flow downfield whether or not you've been gashing them. And I think that's where some of this is going. Again, not necessarily like him as a coach, as a developer, as a person who can connect to players, because I think he is all of those things. But when it comes to being more innovative and fresh-minded and not trying to get a lead at halftime and then sit on it, but put your foot on the throat of your opponent, keep scoring points the way that the teams like the 49ers and the Dolphins do when they're having success. I think that's where this all sort of stemmed from. Was, did Vrabel want more control? There's conflicting reports that he did. Other people are saying that he actually asked Amy Adams-Strunk to hire someone, a general of football, like a football operations president type of person that would be above him and Rand Carthon, that they would both answer to one person as opposed to answering to the owner. So I don't know if he necessarily did want more control. He might have, and that, it could be a false report out there. But I really think this is about Amy Adams-Strunk felt Mike Vrabel wasn't going to win a Super Bowl. She wants something young and innovative. She looks around the league and sees these exciting offenses. The Titans haven't scored 30 points in a football game since late in the 2021 season. They went over 2 full calendar years, and it's going to be, 2.5 by the time we get to September without scoring 30 points in a game. So I think they just wanted a fresh approach, and it could end up being a mistake. If Mike Vrabel goes to New England, gets to draft a quarterback at number 3 and has instant success, it's going to look really bad on what the Titans have done here. But on the other hand, if they get their guy and they have success next year, with Will Levis and a lot of draft capital and a lot of salary cap space this offseason, I think that was another part of it. If the vision wasn't aligned, if Mike Vrabel wasn't on the same page, are you going to let him have a big say in how you're going to spend that cap space this offseason, on what you're going to do with the 7th overall pick this year, and then turn around, if it doesn't work, fire him next year, and you sort of waste this important offseason? I think that all plays a role in this.
Justin Graver, you've said it all. By the way, ironic that if you added a czar in there, you would go from Vrabel saying, I want to cook and I want the ingredients. Then you have too many chefs potentially. You don't have too many cooks either. So a lot of stuff to figure out with the Titans. We know you got a lot to do over there at Fox, and let's hit him with another Gravedigger, because I missed that drop. I missed that man. And you look healthy and happy, and we miss you, bud.
Thanks. I miss you guys too. Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Good to see you.
Love you, Graver.
See you, man.
Love you guys.
Iconic Hall of Famer. Patrick, your thoughts on the situation?
Well, and the one thing that I really want to try to figure out from not just Graver, but from the Tennessee Titans, because earlier in the week it was, well, we're not going to do the end of the year news conference until later this week, until after coach has this conversation with ownership and management. And it's like, oh, okay, what's going on there? And I just wonder, is there a scenario where the conversation ends and Mike Vrabel is still the head coach? Because if that's the case, then that signals a major problem to me, that you're just making these decisions in the spur of the moment based on a conversation right at the end of the football
Like the
season.
Malarkey thing, too, which I know
which sets up, but it's still a pattern, right? If you go from these coaching decisions, and it's like if these hire fire decisions are coming down to one conversation, then what are we really deciding?
Right. And there was also a report literally 6 weeks ago that said Mike Vrabel is going to be safe in 2024 and beyond. That was from Diana Rossini of The Athletic. And that felt like it came straight
And beyond.
that something like that doesn't
Forever.
come from like an assistant coach. That comes from the top. And you can almost see, you can connect the dots because the Titans put it out there, or we found out from Diana on Monday as well, that they didn't want to do the trade potentially for Mike Vrabel because it could take a long time, and they just didn't want to get stuck in that process, and they wanted to get going with possibly hiring the new coaches. And then I watched this video. I'm not going to say it's like Kremlin-like, but it did remind me of a very strange situation. It was a 5-minute video from the Titans with Strunk and a reporter, I guess, from the team.
Mm-hmm.
Had a bit of a PBS like public television vibe
Yeah,
to
it
it,
did.
actually.
But I know, and I'm not speaking for this one in particular, but I've heard of ones like this. Those she knows what questions is coming. That's basically like a press conference without being a press conference. She's going to hit the buttons she wants to hit to get the voice out there to the fans, which is fine. That's her right. I don't think it's crazy. But one of the things she stressed in that one was that exact same point, that she didn't want to go through the whole trade thing. She basically went through everything Justin was saying there, and I don't know.
Don't want
She
to go
seems
through the trade thing.
like that it would
to
take
bring value to
that it would
the
take too long.
organization.
I don't think that, to be fair, I don't think the trade would have happened anyways, because like Mike Vrabel has to go along with that, and
Right.
it could be a big process. I don't know if they would have
Drama.
gotten everything. It just was all very interesting. This was not a team that people thought of having great ownership with her father, or was it her father-in-law? I forget, Bud Adams, but either way, I think it was her father.
It was a fun window, though. I liked that Titans team. I like the window is kind of ending the Brady Pats era. Was it who had the pick 6? Was it Logan Ryan?
Logan Ryan.
To getting to the AFC title game, like that team was kind of fun to watch, even though they weren't the traditional type of air it out attack. You had Derrick Henry as the lead, and Ryan Tannehill is a really good veteran quarterback, and that window closed, and now they're into the great unknown without Vrabel as well.
Yeah, changes were already coming to the roster, especially on offense, but I can't really think of an AFC team that is set for a bigger tone shift than the Titans, because they were very much Mike Vrabel's creation.
Yes, and the players love him. They played hard. Like, he's a tough one to figure, because I don't think he's ever shown he provides any particular schematic advantage. Like, the year he was a defensive coordinator in the Texans, they were kind of a terrible defense, one of the worst defenses in the league. Like, even in Tennessee, like, the numbers didn't say it, and yet you can see it on the field that they're greater than the sum of their parts. They're tough. They play hard. I think that the moment they'll look back on is that Bengals loss when they were the 1 seed. Yes, they made the AFC Championship. But the next year, they follow it up with the 1 seed. That game was very winnable, and they just couldn't get any pass protection. And that essentially continued for the next 3 seasons.
That was that special Cincinnati season. All right, let's move on. More to get to. Some head coaches who are safe, but their assistant. You okay, Mark?
No. Yes.
Some head coaches that are okay, but there are changes beneath them. The Bears fire offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, as well as 4 other offensive assistants. So there was so much Claybon of intrigue around the Bears right now. Palace intrigue. And the idea is Matt Eberflus going to get a 3rd season. Well, it certainly looks like he'll get year 3, but they're going to do it with a whole new staff. Of course, remember defensive coordinator Alan Williams resigned from his role earlier this season. Very murky scenario there. So while Rappaport reported that Eberflus is likely to remain the team's defensive play caller, he's expected to hire a true defensive coordinator per a source, and this is all set against the backdrop of the biggest quarterback decision in the history of the organization.
Yeah, there's a lot of different places that the Bears could go at this point, and I guess the Getsy thing seemed like it was somewhat inevitable, as the question was Eberflus going to join him? And now, if somebody else is coming in to bring over the defensive play calling, and then somebody else is going to be, of course, calling the offense, it's one of those things where we're watching league-wide. It's, you got to get the play caller. The play caller has to be the head coach. Otherwise, how are you going to get these guys? How does that match with the idea that we're going to have either a quarterback, or this is Justin Fields in a must-make-it situation? I just don't think it sounds great for the current head coach of the Bears as of right now, considering the position he's in.
Yeah, I think he goes into next year because there's hope in Chicago, that there's pressure on him. And I guess when you go and look around at the available play callers out there, it is a bit of a what are you telling that OC? Like behind the scenes, we're sticking with Justin Fields and we need someone who can design an offense around Justin Fields and make him special, or we might be going and drafting Caleb Williams or Drake May, and we need someone who can flexibly go design an offense around that. Because if you go and get a Greg Roman type person to make Justin Fields the center of the universe, that guy can't go do the thing you'd want if you had Caleb Williams. So it's a very intriguing selection on who you pick here.
You probably keep your cards so close to the vest because you don't trust anyone yet, even if you have a feeling. And they probably don't have a final answer, although you would think Ryan Poles in his heart of hearts kind of knows which way he's leaning. But yeah, I think you pick a coordinator based on the expectation that you're going to have a rookie. The thing that has to be so frustrating for Bears fans is this is the exact same setup that has failed them multiple times before with this ownership in a row. So you kept John Fox one extra year after he was absolutely terrible, 3-13. They draft Mitch Trubisky. You fire John Fox. Then it's like a coach in Matt Nagy that didn't have him, blah, blah, blah. You were thinking about maybe firing Nagy with Trubisky. You keep him one extra year. You draft Justin Fields. It doesn't go that well. You fire Matt Nagy, and then it's Fields starting over again with a coach that didn't happen. And the most likely outcome here, because Matt Eberflus hasn't shown to be a huge difference maker, it is a good roster, and maybe they will win. But if they don't, Matt Eberflus will not be here next year, and it'll be a coach who didn't draft the. It's just they're never synced up, and it's always the same thing.
In other news, the Jaguars melted down the stretch of the regular season, missing out on the playoffs. Usually when something like that happens, heads roll. And if it's not the head coach, it's the people right below him. That's what happened here. The Jaguars fired defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell and multiple assistants on Monday, the team announced. Doug Peterson had said earlier Monday that he was still, quote, processing the disappointing end to the season and was going to take some time before making changes. Well, he didn't need much time. In addition to Caldwell, they also fired D-line coach Brenston Buckner, passing game coordinator and cornerbacks coach Deshea Townsend, inside linebackers coach Tony Gilbert, safeties coach Cody Grimm. Senior defensive assistant Bob Sutton, and defensive quality control coaches T. Mitchells and Sean Kalina. So they kind of clean out a lot of the staff, and not a surprise.
Not a surprise, but they had different options. It was interesting listening to some of the local coverage. John Shipley does a great Jaguars podcast that I've listened to. And they were like, are they going to change the offensive coordinator? Because the offense got a lot worse and was more disappointing. Whereas this season, the defense, which is mediocre, did improve from where it was a year ago. Or could the GM, Trent Baalke, be in trouble? Because I think if you were doing a blame pie, he might have
a blame pie,
the biggest
tasty
one. But Doug Peterson's an offensive coach ultimately, and it's sort of the cleanest, easiest thing to just blame it on the defense. And their defense certainly struggled in that Week 18 game and was kind of sloppy with missed tackles throughout the season.
It was a total team implosion. It was on both sides of the ball, but the defense certainly. I mean, it's interesting is Doug Peterson, one of the reasons that he ended up, breaking up with the Eagles was in that final offseason, they asked him to do this exact same thing, which was make major coaching changes, and he showed extreme loyalty and wound up leaving the Eagles for that reason. But in this case, you're right, it's not his side of the ball, and there was clear evidence that change needed to come.
Yeah, especially down the stretch, they go through that run. There's the Jake Browning game. The Bengals scored 34 points, and they lose to the new look Flacco Browns, which everybody did. And they lose to the Ravens, which everybody did. But the 28 points against the Titans were a few weeks ago. They blew out the Titans. It was 34-14. It just looked like a functionally different situation. And Christian Kirk hurts, but it was tough to defend the Jags defense, the way that they played the entire season. They made some key turnovers in some spots, but you go back when you're examining the schedule, it really just wasn't a good defense.
The offense seemed really poorly coached, though, too. But that's what are you going to do? You could switch coordinators, but it's ultimately Peterson. They just got to button that up. All these interceptions where the receivers don't know where they are. They can't get a short yardage play. It stuck out more too to me, the offensive coach.
Think about that Chiefs loss where there were like multiple drops in the end zone, and it seemed to plague them all year. And I mean, I think the whole thing about Doug Peterson, it's Trevor Lawrence, and he took a step back. I know he's banged up. He played through a lot of injuries, but it's like there was this incredible promise that Trevor Lawrence was becoming a top 5 quarterback, and we saw a lot of the old mistakes
Did you see
pop up.
the reel that popped up this week on Twitter of near touchdowns from Trevor Lawrence? It's like, I mean, we're talking, what, 10, 12 touchdowns that are plays that could be or should be made. And you know, that's why I would not be surprised if with some tweaks to what they're doing and it has a healthy year that he's a monster next year. I'm not out on Lawrence as a monster.
Everybody's going to overreact. Like Dak has some picks at the end of last season. It's like, oh God, it's over for Dak. Like I think Trev will be fine. My question, because for folks who didn't watch the game, of course, if you look at the highlights, it's Trevor Lawrence pulling the ball back on 4th and goal where he almost had a chance to score. But on 3rd down, they lined up with 3 guys in a row and ran this like spin out pass that had no hope. And it's just like, what's the plan? Like,
but on that like failed sneak by Lawrence, like there was other tape showing that linemen were, you know, because he changed the call, he changed into that play call that it didn't go deep enough where linemen were doing the right thing.
He just did it on his own.
Right.
He's done that before, but doing it, that was on him
and he took accountability for it too. And I'm with you, Dan. Like, there's no reason to not believe in him at this point, but it was just like the
tough
progress.
I with you, Dan, though, that luck, and this is true of all these firings, like luck is an uncomfortable portion of why any of this happened. Just like that, you had some bad breaks.
If I had to call and execute that 3rd down play, I would have tried to YOLO it myself too.
Hell yeah. By the way, some nice melodrama. Speaking of palace intrigue with the Giants, defensive coordinator Wink Martindale, and this bummed me out when I heard this right before we started. They have mutually agreed to part ways. The team announced Wednesday. Earlier today, the story was that, and the background was Brian Dable, I believe, came out and said early Monday, I expect Wink to be back. Then they have a meeting that same day. That they had a conversation, and that's a nice way to call it. Wink and Brian Dable, and it ended with Martindale cursing out his coach, and it was all about the Giants' decision to move on and Dable's decision to move on from outside linebackers coach Drew Wilkins and defensive assistant Kevin Wilkins. Both had come over with Wink from Baltimore, and Drew was like Wink's right-hand man. And the Post reported that Dable was adamant about getting rid of Drew and by association Kevin because there was, quote, a feeling in the building that Martindale and Drew Wilkins were creating their own fiefdom, one of my favorite words, within the coaching staff, at times bypassing Dable and believing they had to answer only to each other and ultimately ownership. So Dable like sniffs this out, or he perceives this, whether it's true or not, and says, hell no. And it ends with Dable cursing out Dable, Wink cursing out Dable, storming out of the facility. And then Mike G's on the Insider Show on NFL Plus today, and he's saying the Giants are in a weird spot because he just stormed off and went to Florida and never technically resigned, and they also didn't fire him. So they were kind of handcuffed a little bit.
They owed him $3 million.
And it was going to cause a problem for the Giants. So my disappointment is that as a man who loves melodrama, but can't talk right now, that's all over because they mutually agree. And Wink,
you're upset that it's been resolved.
It was fun, and I wanted more dysfunction. But Wink's gonna get a job somewhere. But also, like the head coach that hires him's like, damn, do I want these Wilkins boys with me? I don't know.
It's so funny because like it reminded me of that book Collision Low Crossers that we all read, where a big part of the drama between the Jets was that the offensive staff.
By the way, drink every time Mark still brings up Collision Low Crossers.
I literally actually like had a long talk with Collision Low Crossers with Pete Carroll way back in the day. And he
Drink.
had a lot to say. But anyways, like that.
People should check it out. There are not enough great
check out what?
books. Collision Low Crossers.
There aren't enough books like this.
I did order, and I have that book on my coffee table
There it is.
because
What book?
Collision Low
There you
Crossers.
go.
Yeah, because Mark
Pour
has
up.
referenced so much. I literally bought it 2 weeks ago.
It is real. There
really
should be
good,
more
yeah.
books like this, Greg, because
I could have lent it to you, but good for the author.
they embedded
Yeah.
someone with the Jets for like a year plus. And like you learn, number one, everything that happens to a football team the minute the offseason starts and what the coaches do. but it got so soiled because the offensive staff, and you had Sanchez and things were up and down, obviously, and the defensive staff they weren't even speaking to each other, and they were openly at odds. And I think like bad teams, this is what starts to happen. And it's like this year's Jets and this year's Giants, where you've got defunct quarterback play and you've got a defense trying to hold down the fort, and Wink Martindale is no wilting flower.
I love it. I'm with you, Dan. I'm sad this happened. Although I don't like Dable's move here. It just seems cowardly.
Well,
You have a press conference. You say Martindale's going to be back. Obviously, there's some issues here. Glazer reported on it 3 weeks ago, or whatever it was, a month ago, that the two of them weren't getting along. You say he's going to be back. Then you fire his two closest assistants without having a conversation with him ahead of time. So
That's odd.
that, to me, is you're firing Wink Martindale because you know what's going to happen. So just fire Wink
Did you
Martindale.
I heard this through my reporting. Wink went into the office. He's like, "Where's Drew? Drew,
No, he did not.
Kev, Drew and Kev, Wilkins boys." No answer. They were
No.
gone.
And then,
They gone.
then Brian Dable goes in just from the hallway. They gone.
They gone.
So it's,
You're right, though, Greg. Like, it was a roundabout move. This was the coach of the year a year ago.
well, and there was some reporting too. Like Kafka is unhappy with how Dable has minimized him. He's the offensive coordinator. So then you do have to
I like
a little
Dable.
bit.
I won't stand
I
for
like
this.
Dable, but there just seems to be some
well, I just like why lie to
Cowardly
us?
is strong, by the way. Isn't that part of this? This stuff happens all the time, doesn't it? We hear about this all the time, firing assistants that are connected to people, and then
I only have
get
so
them
many.
to resign.
I only have so many principles, but I do feel like with him, the most important principle is just be forthright in important matters with people around you. So that just seems like you're kind of taking the easy way out.
Don't have a loud, passionate screaming match on national television with somebody and then come out and be like, "Hey, everything's fine. We hang out, we have tea in the afternoon." Like, no, like we had a disagreement. We're not necessarily seeing eye to eye on a certain issue.
But the market, Patrick, like he's trying to put that out because anything you say is going to be amplified.
Sure.
Okay,
It's
well,
one thing to lie to
fortunately,
the
we're not
media.
talking
It's
about
another
dysfunction with the New York Giants.
Yeah.
to not just like handle it with Martindale, person to person.
Are they gonna get rid of the defensive meeting rooms? Because
Drew!
it seems like
Drew,
as a fiefdom, right? Because I had to look it up. It's an area over which someone exercises control in the manner of a feudal lord.
Ooh.
So are we gonna say like anytime the defense is meeting, like, wait, what are you guys talking about? I don't necessarily trust you.
Dable's like, "Hey, Wink, you want to have a conversation real quick?" He's like, "No, I'm actually just about to grab Drew and get some lunch." And Dable's like, "Nah, no, you're not.
You will not be having lunch with
Yeah, you won't be finding Drew. You're just gonna find an empty office." All right, and finally in the news, all quiet in New England for the time being. So Vrabel's out. Hell, Carroll's out. Carroll coached the Pats once upon a time. Not putting that together, but I'm just saying that's history. But a couple days now after Bill's end of season press conference and him mentioning that he was under contract to the Patriots and all the speculation connecting him to multiple teams, including the Atlanta Falcons. No updates. I do have, as the ATN media insider, I did get a quote from Bill. I know this is going to be surprising.
Very surprising.
Because you know what Robert Kraft wants. Kraft wants Bill to quit, and then he looks good, and they start over. But Bill he's putting the heat on Kraft to make the move. Here's what Bill told me exclusively.
Oh, wow.
If you want to stop me, you're gonna have to kill me!
So
emotional.
So he's starting to open up a little bit, and that's good. I think that's good that Bill is being honest with the media, just like Dable. We don't want to be cowardly.
Yeah.
So
Cathartic.
yeah,
Was it easy to get him to go on the record one-on-one with you?
I got him very drunk.
You do wonder, is Robert Kraft making Jonathan Kraft be the bad guy here? They did, by the way, not enjoy that Pete Carroll experience the first time around. That was their welcome to NFL ownership. Was that
It was like 42 eons ago.
Yeah,
the
the
Pete
Pete
Carroll
Carroll-
was a different person.
Pete Carroll thing? I fully expect Bill Belichick to not be the head coach of the Patriots in a week or whenever it's going to be. Tom Curran, who I really trust more than anyone there, has said repeatedly.
Who do you trust more, Tom Curran or your own father? Quick.
About the Patriots?
No.
Life.
Answer.
My father. But he's been operating like they made this decision. The decision is made, and it does make sense to me that there would be some. I think they want to have it be as kumbaya as Seahawks have with Pete Carroll right now. I don't think it's not going to be that kumbaya.
Not Bill's style.
But I think they're trying to just manage it, and that change is coming. It's just hasn't come in the 48 hours after the season.
And you look at Tennessee with Vrabel, and they decided not to pursue the trade route. And it does make sense when you kind of break it down that obviously that Kraft would love to turn this into a trade, but Bill has no reason to make it a trade. And if Bill puts it back on Kraft, it's like, I'm not agreeing to anything like that. You're going to have to fire me. You can't keep me. Like if you don't trade me and you don't fire me, then you got to keep me. And meanwhile, the Patriots are trying to start over, and it's like, when is this going to wrap up? Is the question.
Tom also believes it. Bill wholeheartedly really wants to stay in New England. That is his he loves it there. He's been there forever. He believes he can turn it around, and so yeah, he's got to go out kicking and screaming. He is not assuming that this is a fait accompli. And you never know. Maybe he could be persuasive, but I don't think so. I also don't think any team is waiting around for Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel for that matter on these trades. It's like Vrabel was 6-18. Like, yes, they would give up something potentially, but it's not Mike Vrabel 3 years ago off winning the Coach of the Year. It's not Bill Belichick 10 years ago or anything.
I heard you're saying that. Weish was the same thing. I think Belichick is tremendous. Like, I think he's going to have a big market.
I do too. I just don't think teams are going to wait around to send like a valuable draft pick for him. And if they're waiting around to get like a 5th round pick, it's like, what are we doing here?
It'd be embarrassing to be traded for a 5th round pick.
I'm just saying, like, I don't think anyone's giving up a 1st for Bill right now. We're like going through the hassle of it.
And who do you call? Like, how do you make a trade for Bill Belichick?
I guess the other team
go
has
through
to
Bill
start.
first.
You have to.
Well, true.
Well, yeah, you call.
You got to circle around Bill Belichick, but you call
Kraft,
Krafts, yeah.
That's
but yeah,
it's a thing.
You're going to have to kill me. That's interesting. All right, that's what's happening in the news. Eric, circling back to the Claybon theme song.
Yes, any Claybon theme songs, or anybody theme songs for that matter. We got that Marc Sessler one, just got dropped in our lap. Didn't really ask for it.
It's a banger.
The ATN podcast at gmail.com.
Do you have that? Do you have that? If you're going to mention it, might as well play it. Just to give you an idea of the creativity that we expect. If you're going to submit, don't waste our time. I want actual musicians. I want real production values, because anything less than that is a slap in the face of Patrick Claybon.
Which is fine. Like, you could slap.
And we're not going to go the Dable route with Drew. We want to treat the man with the respect he deserves. You know, so the themes that we've had for Colleen and who else has bass?
Weish has a ton.
By the way, Weish, before we did, here's the Mark theme, by the way.
I am Marc Sessler.
It's so on brand.
Hobart Curtis sent this in for us, guys.
To hear my stuff, everybody can't get enough.
Can't you just picture Mark in a club in Berlin with pierced nipples, just dancing?
Every one of those, all aspects of that story.
I could see him at the DJ table spinning this track.
Yeah,
like with the crowd going
just
nuts.
rolling out of his mind.
Now I'm going on the dance floor. The pierced nipples, paisley open shirt, not like a button down, but no buttons. And he just
nobody's touching my
nipples.
A lot of slow motion.
There's a drop.
So anyway, before the Weish submissions came in, we actually spoke with Weish, like, what do you want? And he talked about his wife, Dee's background, Jamaican background, I believe it is. And we get like kind of something with a little dancey calypso vibe
Caribbean,
to it.
Yeah.
Caribbean. Like what would a Claybon song
Oh, you're going to hate my answer.
No, I'm going to love it.
Because if somebody's taking the time to make a track about me, like, just feel it. Whatever I've ever said that means something to you or anything.
No boundaries.
Yeah, just make it.
You don't need a particular style.
No, I'm not going to put anybody in a box. Like,
so you're saying lyrically go wherever you want, but musically, is there a genre that perhaps you would?
I would prefer control over the lyrics more than the music, to be honest.
We can't offer you that. We can't offer you that. We can't let you shop for the groceries. Okay. Someone's shopping for the groceries and making the meal here.
Yeah,
But
no.
you'll have multiple to pick from if it goes.
Yeah, just-
I didn't. I got one, but that's fine. I really enjoy it. They nailed
Again,
No, I mean that's 1 out of 1.
it. Yeah, they nailed it.
No
if you want
retakes
if you want a
needed.
rolling, sweaty glow stick track like Mark's, like that's fine. Or you could
Doesn't feel right though. I don't know what it is. Like Patrick, there's something.
People are gonna get the essence. They're gonna.
Yeah, you know what? I don't wanna-
Like they know him through the portal of this show.
I was
going
going
to
to offer my opinion on it,
Yeah.
but I'm just going to let the people feel it out.
Yeah, well,
Look
the
at a
musical,
picture
the musical people
of Patrick's
You.
beautiful face.
Oh,
Just stare at it.
thank you.
And what does it bring to you? Like in creatively, how does that get the juices flowing?
It could be a sultry song. We don't.
Yeah,
know.
try to control yourself. Look at it, Pat Claybon's photo.
I don't know if Patrick
My
is like a
goodness.
huge music guy.
Yeah, but he's not, the people making the song are.
That's what I'm saying,
yeah.
but that informs why he doesn't need a
Right.
specific genre or
He's
anything. He's
open-minded on it.
to all of
Yeah.
us.
I also don't know enough to like because musical genres kind of get in the weeds a little bit.
I just remember having a conversation with you one, about me, and you're like, I don't know that much about music, and I was like, okay, that's interesting.
What about something with a bit of like a hoobastank vibe?
like more the reason or crawling
Yeah,
in
like
the dark.
The reason.
Whoa, okay.
I think you're trying to project onto him what he wants.
I had to
You've
share
gotta-
it. For
yeah.
some reason, like the reason. Something
I'm
the reason.
I'm more crawling in the dark than I am the reason.
Okay, there you go. There's just one direction you can go. And I mentioned looking at the pictures of Patrick, be respectful. That's all.
Yeah,
I
control
know it's
yourself.
hard.
Right.
Be respectful. All right, let's take a break. Oh, did we say the name of the email?
Yeah, that's the ATN podcast at gmail.com.
Send them in. Don't disappoint us. We believe in you. And we will send you a signed autograph photo of Marc Sessler in the Levi jacket for the anyone that submits a song that we use on the show. How about that? That means we got to send Mark back for another photo engagement.
No, I'll take it
Yes.
out in the wild, and not take it in.
Evens the score, Greg.
I'm not taking it in the
Yes.
corporate office.
Yes.
We're gonna get you.
No, negative.
Yes, it's gonna be like one of those yearbook photos where they take you outside and put you up against the oak tree.
That photographer was brought here for that window of time. She does not. She's not. in
Dude,
the
she's
building.
downstairs. She's part of the photo team, bud. You got to plug in on this office.
No,
you
I
think
do
we
not.
outsource that? We
I
have
do
a
not need
team.
to plug into the office.
We're gonna have you come in on an off day too. We're gonna get your makeup done.
I will literally drive to Canada before any of that happens.
Let's take a break and we'll be right back. La dee 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 dum, award season has come. Everyone has awards. Why the can't we have them too? Thusly, it is time for the ATN Awards, not to be confused with the AVN Awards.
Certainly not.
I mean, one's more fun than the other.
Yeah, and it's not this one.
All right, now, you see it everywhere. Weirdly, we've never done this, and it's kind of something we had to rectify. We have never. I got you with that one.
You did.
Got a Joe Coy over here.
I wasn't expecting that.
Pat's been to many an AVN award.
Hey,
That's
no.
why he's co-hosted them. You had a memorable patter with Brianna Banks back in 2002, I remember.
Yeah, who can forget?
All right, now let's get into it. It is time to share our picks. And what we did as a collective. A voting system that mirrors what the Associated Press does with the MVP award, which is a voting that breaks it down. You get 5 votes, and a first place vote is 10 points. Second place vote is what? 5 points, was it?
Yeah, and then 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1. And for the NFL, the official awards, which are announced at the honors and all that stuff, that is just for the MVP. But we did it for the other major awards as well. So let's go through them all. And we had a nice voting body this year. It was the 3 of us. Claybon was with us as well. Nick Shook, who's another member of the ATN Hall of Fame, the Sunday Night Man and Beyond the Pipe. You have Colleen Wolfe.
Yeah.
Also turned in her ballot. Also behind the glass, Big Funk and Eric Roberts.
Wow.
That is.
Streets are talking like, should the producers combine to have one producer vote? You know, have they earned a totally separate and equal vote.
Well, I would have
each?
just bullied Randy into taking my vote. So.
Okay.
I thought you were going to stand up for yourself and say that
Honesty.
they deserve it.
No,
But
no, of course we do.
okay.
But if it would have been one vote, I just would have taken the vote.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
I got
Now we-
developing news, by the way.
I'm glad we learned more about your dynamics between the two of you. That was fascinating.
My mom has made a statement on the changing of the guard in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
Mom says, 4-word statement, but incredibly powerful. Football just got uglier. Wow.
This crush has been decades old, right?
It started in Pete was one and done with the Jets.
Yeah.
In 94. So 30 years. And yeah, she's been married almost 55, 50 years. I think.
Fair amount of.
Maybe that was a sneaky key to his college success. Going in those
I don't know how sneaky it was.
recruiting and impressing the moms. Okay.
Unbelievable. That salt and pepper hair will take you far. All right, let's get to it now. MVP. And it is, oh, wait. My dad also has now replied to a statement because I put Keith and Deb on the thread. Any phone call home is also, they're always both on the phone.
Oh, absolutely. Same
Text,
with my parents. Yeah.
Always together.
Yep.
Keith has chimed in
Oh, no.
directly after my mom. Another Jet coach that failed. Hey, man. It's a little competition there, sounds like to me.
He doesn't seem too concerned.
No. All right, let's get to it. MVP, it is a runaway. My only concern with this, and I shared this with producer Eric, was that we're going to be a little too chalky as a group to what everyone else is going to say. But,
Well, that's why
we're also
we
gonna
can
do
get
it the right way.
We can get into how we disagree if we want.
Sure.
With any of the
I hope we disagree.
votes.
Because that makes for good podcasting. All right, the MVP of the league in a landslide, Lamar Jackson, who got first place votes from everyone except for Shooky. Nick Shook gave his first place vote to Christian McCaffrey. Lamar got 75. What do they call it? Points? I don't even know how they do it. Votes?
Seems like a point.
Yeah, points, whatever.
You can call them whatever you want.
Second place, a little bit of surprise, I thought, but narrowly edging out Dak. Christian McCaffrey got 27 points. Dak 26. Fourth place, Brock Purdy. And then fifth place, Tyreek Hill. So Purdy had 16 points. Tyreek had 11. And Mark, I really do think Purdy might do, or I'm almost certain Purdy will do better in the AP voting. But
Maybe.
I think it just goes to show you there was that lingering idea of where Purdy's talents stack up to everything else that's going on around him. But also, I think that stage on Christmas night flopping essentially ended his chance.
Yeah, I went Lamar number 1 and Purdy number 2. Colleen also had Purdy number 2. I think it was like a really unique year for MVP where like they all seemed to square off and duel against each other down the stretch. And I think that, Lamar passed every test. He passed every test and did stump. There was no real second place to me.
Well, also there's another 49er that outvoted, Purdy in this voting, and I think that's part of it. Is that reasonable minds can look at that team and think McCaffrey is the most important guy on it, especially this year. And I think reasonable minds could go Purdy. My big takeaway from doing all these awards is there are no awards, with maybe the exception of Offensive Rookie of the Year, but we could even get into that with the season Puka had, that seem like there's bad choices. Like, I don't think Dak or Purdy are bad choices here. Like, it's completely reasonable to vote for them first over Lamar. I voted Lamar first, CMC second, so I ended up chalk with what we ended up with. But, like, even Josh Allen's, like, not that crazy. He ended up 6th on ours. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets in the top 5 in the final voting.
I had Dak. I gave him my second place vote. And Purdy my third place vote, but I could have easily went the other way on that. But it was very clear the way Lamar closed that he deserved it, and the The Ravens are sitting on a bye right now as a result, in large part because of Jackson's incredible.
You didn't
play.
mention the votes at the very end. Stafford, I gave Stafford a 4th place vote.
I like that. I
think
always
he'll
like
get
when
some.
somebody it's usually a local beat guy, and
Yeah.
they're in Los Angeles. I like that.
Myles Garrett got a 4th place vote. I don't know who
That was me.
That was
Look at
CJ Stroud got a 5th place vote, and then in a total stunner, Colleen voted your mom
Yeah, she got a
4th.
vote.
whose mom is she pointing to?
Your
I saw
mom.
Your mom.
Your
Okay,
mom.
I guess it applies to anyone who
Yeah,
asks
anyone
a question.
who hears.
Yeah.
It's
And you
it's
know
their
what?
mom.
Moms don't get enough credit. So
Facts.
I think that was a great move.
That's a
as
great
well.
vote because she's sort of quietly voted for millions of people.
Yeah, that was
Billions.
Billions.
Colleen.
Probably more than
Yeah.
millions.
And Eric not only voted Josh Allen 3rd, which I think is very reasonable. He made Randy put him on the ballot too. So that
course.
was where those votes came from.
Twisted his arm violently. All right, let's move to
I talked him out of
offensive.
Jordan Love, guys.
Yeah,
That would have been fun.
yeah.
As like a 5th place vote.
offensive player of the year. Now, this one it made me think if how do the voters do with this? Because hypothetically, if you vote, quarterbacks in the MVP rankings, do you just eliminate them from this entirely, or do you put them? But I did. I took them out. I took them out.
I had the same question. It's like, why wouldn't I take like the second best quarterback that I voted for an MVP and just make him offensive player of the year? But I went 0 quarterback strategy. with it.
Sometimes quarterbacks have won both. I remember Peyton Manning did it, for instance, and that's why I've always been annoyed by this award. That
Then you're the
too nebulous.
MVP
And if you
by
vote,
nature.
well, it's also like if you voted them second, then I'll vote for the quarterback first. I'd say it's most valuable non-quarterback.
All right. With that said, here is the offensive player of the year, and it's deserved. It is the running back of the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey, with 65 votes.
If you're watching on YouTube, we got some
Really
nice graphics.
Was that Big Funk on the graphics?
No, that was me, guys.
Oh, Roberts.
Not only
It was Funk, but Robert's twisted.
Yeah, that was-
no.
taking
it
votes
was.
from Funk and now taking credit too. It was rough.
CMC got first place votes from, let's see, everybody except for Claybon, who went with Tyreek Hill, and I gave CD Lamb some love. I'm on a love affair with CD right now. But it was CMC finishing first, Tyreek Hill distant second, 38 points, CD third, 28 points, Josh Allen 15 points, Dak with 6 points, which tells you, the quarterbacks are kind of floating in another world. Why Tyreek over CMC, Patrick?
I was just looking at who stood out the most among their peers, and I don't think you could say anybody came even close to what Tyreek did as a wide receiver this year, and especially those past couple when Tyreek was not 100% and he was still dominating in many aspects of the game. Like he hobbles back on the field to make a game-winning play. That just kind of sent me over the edge. Not necessarily that, and I knew Christian was going to get some votes, and maybe there was some vote chicanery with leaving Christian off of my offensive player of the year.
You took him off entirely.
Yeah.
Wow, it didn't help you.
It did not ultimately matter, and
That's a strategy, though.
yeah, it's one of weird people do it all the time and never acknowledge it. I will acknowledge it as trash, but I tried and I failed.
Oh, that's interesting. Does that actually happen? Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, especially
Come
in
on.
baseball.
come on. Ridiculous. All right, let's move to, unless anybody else something out there.
I like that me and you gave Kyron Williams some love as a 4th place.
Little
vote
pop.
here.
What
How
a
you got-
year. What a difference maker for
Great.
that offense in Los Angeles. All right, defensive player of the year. Now, this is a wide open year because I thought Myles Garrett obviously was a leader early on, and then he gets banged up and the production dips, so that opened the door. Could anyone walk in that door? Here is the winner with 68 votes. I don't like saying points. For some reason, it doesn't have the same
No, votes make sense.
Yeah.
gravitas.
Sure.
68 votes. Myles Garrett wins it. Mark, congratulations. TJ Watt, even though he picked up a couple sacks there before going down with the injury in week 17, 38 votes. Micah Parsons, 33 votes. Max Crosby got 7. Ooh, I forgot about Max. Sorry, bud. And Duron Bland with 7, who had all those pick sixes. You know, that happens too.
It does,
Just
'cause
aren't paying
yeah.
attention. I missed Zay Flowers too.
Eric knows
Sorry.
that I was working on this, toiling right up to the final minutes, and there were.
Oh, were there edits?
I don't know how much he wants me to pull
No,
back
we'll
the
just-
curtain,
we
but
can-
it was.
No, what
it was
what
something.
happened? How many edits?
I
wouldn't call them edits.
Not edits.
It was
I didn't
additions.
understand the assignment out of the gate in terms of going 5 deep with everyone.
You wolfed it?
So he gave me
yes.
the winner, and then he gave me the top 3, and then he gave me the top 5. It was
Yeah,
a
so
matter
it was
of
a
like
process.
an hour.
It was
pause.
like a reveal.
Yeah,
It was,
it
yeah, I
was.
wanted to make it add an element of showmanship
Yeah.
and drama to it, and
Like
the
behind the
annoyance
scene,
of
that's
the
next
producer
level
there.
showmanship
Yeah.
when it's just you and the producer private.
He
fun.
wasn't asking for that.
It was fun.
How did Colleen do with the assignment, by the way?
Great.
One,
You won
no
one
edits.
email. Yeah, one email.
Good for her.
And an extra your mom in there, so she was
Really?
on point yesterday.
Let's see the way this broke down. Miles got first place votes from Sestog, Connie, Shook, Claybon, Randy, and Eric. I gave Greg, you gave him a second place vote, and I gave him a third place vote.
You went TJ Watt. I went Micah Parsons. Again, I think those 3 are all really strong. I tend to think Myles Garrett will win, but I think TJ Watt has a real chance.
I think it will be closer.
Yeah, I think it'll be closer than
But
this.
they
vote.
actually no, because they don't do the MVP style voting
Yeah.
for anything other than MVP.
Oh.
So this is just one pick and done.
But even
right?
then, it could. I believe when
Yeah.
TJ Watt won it before, I could be wrong. That was one of those years like he had less than 20 votes, but he had the most votes. And something similar could happen. Parsons pass is just I think he's the best. And then there is some good numbers for it. Like he does have way more pressures than anyone in the league. His pass rush win rate is significantly better than anyone. Myles Garrett is a strong number 2 there, and then it's a pretty big drop to number 3. Parsons faces the most amount of double teams in the league. He's beaten double teams the most. And so I think TJ Watt would be a good vote. I think Garrett, who is my second place, would be a great vote too. But just like pulling them apart, once I saw those sort of numbers, I was like, that was enough for me to just back what my gut tells me about
Which is,
Parsons.
by the way, why I threw Aaron Donald a vote, because his pop the hood metrics are all still dominant. He's always commanding all those double and triple teams, and still, he was setting the table for your boy, young Kobe, this season.
You think he's been better than Myles Garrett this season? Aaron
No,
Donald?
he
I had
voted
at the
him
bottom of the
like a
Okay.
5th place.
but I gave him
I thought you had
gave him a
the second.
vote.
Okay.
I had Garrett third.
I
but
think the
you could
thing
really
about
go
Garrett-
any of those 3. Honestly,
It does come down to, I think, also just like the experience of watching football and the player itself. Because it's like I completely hear your argument for Michael and also for TJ, but I think like Garrett has been at a defensive player of the year level throughout the last couple seasons, and this was just a little bit more of a special performance on a special defense.
I do actually like rewarding him. Like, it was one reason why I had him second versus third versus TJ Watt. It's like, TJ Watt's already won one. I do think that's okay to take into account. Like, James Harrison won one, and he was very deserving a couple times. And he kind of won it. It was like Pacino winning for Scent of a Woman or whatever. He won it in the year that I didn't think he should have won it, but I was like, it was good that he won it. I thought it was good. So I think that's okay for Myles Garrett. Why not?
well, in terms of my ethics, I give it to the best man.
Yeah.
Outright.
It's kind of like a makeup call. In which instance you have 2 bad calls instead of 1.
You,
Yeah, but if they're all like, if you're just like breaking ties or whatever. I
but you
think
were
it's okay.
talking about your personal level of integrity when it
Yeah.
comes to being forthright with people earlier.
just said it.
which I wrote that down for myself, by the way. I want to tell you, best man for the job. That's my credo. That's where I stand. Mark, you're next later in the show.
I believe Myles Garrett was the best player.
No, I
What?
want something more like a personal
Oh, I could.
stance
Yeah.
on
Well,
integrity that
I'll
you
try
have.
to cook one up.
I'm saying with big life decisions, like firing a man. Yes, I was saying that. Important
Hey,
decision.
I'm not questioning what you
Let's
said.
go.
I'm just saying I was sharing
Yes.
some ethics. Best
I
man.
think we're all the better for it, Dan.
All right, let's move to where are we at now? Offensive Rookie of the Year. This one was surprising. Hit the what is that called again?
It's a drum roll.
No, it's timpani. That's what it is. It's the timpani. Timpani? By the way, somebody on Twitter gave me something to chew on that I loved it. Oh, here it is from Hugh Robertson. People are wondering, those people being me, what do you call it when you're strumming the harp?
I would say strumming, but
That's what I thought
yeah.
too. Well, Hugh Robertson tells us that Hugh Robertson tells us that flourish on the harp leading into New Horizons Monday is called a glissando. Oh,
No, I like
that's
that
a
better.
word.
I like that better.
A cascade of notes rippling into each other, not unlike the woes currently befalling the Philadelphia Eagles.
What a beautiful tweet.
Heed the call. Great tweet. Let me hear that again. This
Tweet of the year.
is
Tweet of the year.
a glissando.
That was multiple. That was glissando.
Glissandos. When there's two, it's glissandos. All right, now give me the timpani because it's time to announce the offensive rookie of the year. This one was closer than I thought it was going to be, but with 65 votes. You know it's the quarterback of the Houston Texans. He's getting ready to knock out Mark Brown. C.J. Stroud, the offensive rookie of the year for around the NFL, just narrowly edging out Puka Nacua by 10 votes, 65 to 55. First place votes for CJ from Zuzzer, Greg, Mark, Colleen, and Shook. Second place votes from Claybon, Funk, and Eric. First place votes to Puka for those last three names. Mark, it's Stroud, though. Stroud wins it.
Yeah,
Not in a landslide for us.
It was Puka has been incredible. He broke a record dating back to 1960, and from wire to wire, he was a fascination. I mean, for me, it's degree of difficulty. Like C.J. Stroud coming in and right away doing things that you'd expect a quarterback to do in year 3 and 4, and looking like a potential, like I thought at times a possible MVP candidate. And like Shook gave him an MVP vote, and it's like Stroud has completely changed the organization. And I just think I gave that a little bit more value than wide receiver.
I struggle with that because I would want to give it to a receiver if he was that exceptional as a receiver. He has a case to be made, maybe not all pro because but second team all pro, the top 4 wide receivers in the league. But Stroud to me was a top 6 quarterback in the league. So like if Stroud wasn't this exceptional, then I would have gone Puka. Like you look at some of the previous winners, Puka would have won it over Garrett Wilson. Jamar Chase is close. Herbert would have been close. Kyler, I would have said he would have won it over Saquon, Kamara, maybe not Dak. That was an incredible rookie year. Like it had to be a really special rookie year to beat out Puka, but I think Stroud had that year.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is one of those you look back and, wow, a quarterback who hit the ground running as a star, and then you can understand why people are tossing drinks in Charlotte because you had a chance and passed on that man. By the way, I threw Bijan a vote.
I was surprised to see that.
You know what, Greg, you had mentioned, I think he finished over 1,400 total yards, and it was a lot of incompetence around him.
You had a 5th place vote, yeah.
In the play calling, and I just almost a nod of appreciation that I still see you as a potential superstar. So thank you for doing your best in trying circumstances.
The bottom of the list was more mixed up. Sam Laporta was a strong 3rd, and yeah, he would have been a good candidate in a lot of years. Jaden Reed and Jahmyr Gibbs were tied for 5th. Tank, I assume that's not Tank Bigsby.
No,
I don't think so.
That's Del Dog.
Tank Dell, yes. I don't know why I had Tank Bigsby on the brain. Jordan Addison gets a little vote. Achan gets a vote. Zay Flowers gets 4. There we go.
All right, let's move to defensive rookie of the year. This one I struggled with, but here we go. Defensive rookie of the year. The winner is just like the Jets last year. The Texans sweep the category. Will Anderson, the defensive end, wins it with 63 votes. We have Jalen Carter, the Eagles defensive tackle, 38 votes. And then Witherspoon of Seattle gets 25. That's the top 3. Young Kobe just misses out on a medal, 24 points, 24 votes. Excuse me. I struggled with this one, guys. For instance, I gave Will Anderson a 3rd place vote. And Greg, I see you gave him a 2nd place vote, and then everyone else gave him 1st place vote, except for, Shook, who gave him a 2nd place vote as well. Mark, what was your thinking on this one?
I think Will Anderson is the kind of player that helped the Texans in every aspect of what his position is. He was good against the run. He's a good pass rusher. He hit the ground running, looking like the guy from the start. And for me, I thought Jalen Carter and the whole Eagles experience probably tinged my thinking there a little bit. But I think the Houston Texans best draft class around.
If there was a more cohesive and consistent defensive, not just plan, but effort from Philadelphia, it might have changed things. But to watch Will Anderson playing hurt towards the end of the year, like still impact the games, whereas the Eagles defense is.
Yeah, I was the only one that gave Carter a first place vote because I was kind of looking at some of the production and then the analytics, and
his pass rush win rate and everything like that is
his ranking is not amongst rookies. He is already one of the very best defensive tackles in the league in terms of all the generating pressure and just being a cog in the middle of that defense. He's already a star, and I think I didn't want to penalize him because the rest of the defense is completely fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, I thought those three players, and I would put Kobe Turner in there, were so close that I actually, I put some. I tried to figure out, there is almost nothing separating these three guys. You could make different arguments, I think, for all of them. I think I voted Kobe Turner first. The producers didn't give him even a fifth place vote.
I gave him a second place vote.
Once again, I just wonder about handing them this much responsibility.
Oh, that's why you were I
mean, well, I didn't know. Ivan Pace gets third place, and we can't get Kobe Turner.
Oh, damn.
And Kobe Turner plays interior defensive line, so he only had 8 or 9 less pressures than Will Anderson. He was in the top 10 of all defensive tackles in terms of interior pressures. Now, Jalen Carter actually was like slightly ahead of him even too. And I thought, okay, is it Aaron Donald setting him up? And then you think, like, has Aaron Donald ever have a defensive tackle literally have any stats next to him? No. So that didn't seem like it's a really strong argument. There wasn't much separating all these guys. They all were very good in terms of their pass rush win rate. Will Anderson was probably the best run stopper, but I gave it to Turner. Give him a little extra love. Claybon didn't give him anything either.
Oh,
and Yaya Diaby gets a fourth.
Why do you hate Kobe?
That's kind of fun.
I thought Greg would like Yaya Diaby.
No, I like that one. I like that. That's fun that Yaya.
Disappointed Greg, Patrick.
Yeah, it's Devin Witherspoon that Greg hates.
No, I put him 5th, and he came in
Well,
third.
that's Brian Branch.
I put Branch.
Okay, so then leave me alone.
All right, finally, let's bring this thing in for a landing. The coach of the year. It's the coach of the year. Very competitive this season. D'Amico Ryans wins it. Surprising. Do we have the voting grid on that one? With 68 votes, Stefanski, who was my first place pick, comes in a kind of a deep second.
You only got 2
48.
first place. Only you and I voted Stefanski first.
And then Kyle Shanahan gets 12 points, Shane Steichen 11, Dan Campbell 7. That's the top 5. Okay, Claybon, who did you have first?
I had D'Amico first.
Tell us why.
And we don't have to go back too far where there's like a prosperity gospel / comedian guy, like surreptitiously recording meetings in Houston. They fire back-to-back coaches. There's all sorts of stuff happening, and then D'Amico comes in. They have a candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year. They're in the playoffs in a division that we did not think the Texans would win. I think, considering all of that, D'Amico was the Coach of the Year.
I really struggle with this one because
he was my second one.
I think he fits. He checks every box. I think the thing about Stefanski that outweighed everything else for me was if you knew any team going into the year would have 5 quarterbacks. It's an obvious argument, but like to survive all that and like really have bad quarterback play through 85% of the season and stay afloat, that's good coaching. Like, and I think that he also is someone, his demeanor after so many years of wreckage in Cleveland, like he's just got this calm, cool demeanor, and he's now won it twice, and he's been the same guy the entire time.
Well, we'll see if he wins it. This makes me think maybe D'Amico Ryans.
Well, if he's won it here, he has not won it.
I'm with you. It's a win.
So, yeah.
It's a W.
He won it with me, but like, yeah.
That was why we went over unders the other day. The Watson thing was so overpowering that I thought that got in the way of like looking at the roster and that there was talent on both sides of the ball, and they got the coaching, the defensive coordinator looked like an upgrade, but what ended up happening was you lose Watson, even though he wasn't playing at a high level, you lose Chubb, and for them to somehow
And
not only
the offensive line,
yep, for them not only to survive it, it's not like they snuck into the playoffs at 9-8. They had 11 wins going into the last week of the season and then rested their starters. And I just think Stefanski deserves so much credit for that. And, with the Flacco magic, like Flacco deserves obviously the most credit, but Flacco was, for the Jets and anyone else the last 5 years, a very hit or miss proposition, usually a miss. And now he's playing like an all pro, and Stefanski's an offensive dude. And I think this is his award. I'd be very surprised if D'Amico actually gets it.
I think D'Amico has a chance just because they won 6 games in the last 2 years, and that's a big deal.
Yeah,
and I think it goes into what are you rewarding for the whole job of coaching. I think Stefanski did that exceptionally as well, because you're not judging him on his offensive production. That's one little ding against him, is as well as he's done making them competitive, especially late in the season. They're 27th, 28th in like EPA per play, and he's an offensive coach. But he was good at hiring Jim Schwartz and getting everything together. But I think D'Amico Ryans, there is something that you can't even calculate. And I think Kyle Shanahan, that's why I had him so high too. I think I had him second or third. And I can't remember who I had between Stefanski and Shanahan. But everything that goes into it, not just calling the plays, hiring the coaches, helping to bring in the players, everything. And Ryan's changed that culture, but Stefanski has too. And so either one would be good.
Yeah, I feel like this award has been relative to expectations for a very long time.
Right. Mike Smith won it multiple times. Come on. It's like the expectations were low because Mike Smith was the coach. And
guy wore Tavas.
Dennis Allen's going to win next year, baby.
All right. Good stuff. Those are our awards. You'll get the actual, these are the actual awards in my mind, but the ones that are seen as gospel, you have to wait till NFL Honors a few days before the Super Bowl. We're going to be back on Thursday with the preview of Super Wildcard Weekend. I think it's going to be one of the most competitive and compelling ones ever. So thank you for listening so far this week, and more to come. And Patrick, you've said it all. Anything to add?
Yes. If the Saints started Jameis Winston next year and he lost every single game and had one tie, he and Dennis Allen would have the same win-loss record percentage-wise. So there it is.
Wow. Okay.
That's good.
It's a factoid.
That's a fact. Jack. All right. Till Thursday. Heed the call.